The Anunnaki remnants on Earth are but a shadow of the Anunnaki elite, Anunnaki Nephilim. Although Nibiru has been called the 12th planet, technically it's not a planet of our solar system. In fact, it's a planet from another solar system, and the star that was the sun of its solar system has been extinguished. Nibiru was never visible from the Earth, but the star, which was the center of Nibiru's solar system, was visible in the skies of Earth, from Earth. The orbiting pattern of Nibiru gave the Anunnaki the advantage of having a mobile observatory from which they could observe and investigate many other planets near its orbit. Now, I have to put in here my comment concerning Zecharia Sitchin's and his Sumerian tablets. He claims that a lot of the moons of our planets and bodies that we believe are moons of our planets are actually space stations or spaceships camouflaged as moons. Now, going back to this, the early people named Planet X as Nibiru in Sumerian and Marduk in Babylonian. It was customary to name planets after gods, after all. And it's been said that the ancient Mesopotamians believed that Nibiru was the 12th planet in our solar system and that it was heaven where their gods resided and came from. Nibirians, the people of Nibiru, are often referred to as the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Elohim, plural for God. I shall refer to them as Anunnaki, as this is what the general population was known as by the Sumerians and by those at the present time, although most of us call them Nephilim as well. Anyway, the word Anunnaki literally means those who came from heaven to earth. In the Old Testament, these heavenly visitors are called Anakim, K-I-M, Anakim. Nibiru was populated by a reptilian super race and governed by elite aristocracy known as the Nephilim in Hebrew, which means they who have come down from the heavens to earth. Now, we know concerning this reptilian super race is what the Emerald Tablets of Thoth also tell us. Thoth the Atlantean, who gave left those tablets of emerald, and he explains to us that these reptilians are a superhuman race. Well, they're not, they're a super race, not human, but they appear to us as human, whereas they're serpent-headed and they're scaly reptilian skinned. And he says that they're definitely out for our, they have evil intentions against us, and they're out to slave the human soul and humanity and create chaos. And they're not to be trusted, obviously. So this is what Thoth claims in the Emerald Tablets. They can even do time travel. They also exist in interdimensional levels, and that they can zip in and out from other dimensions to materialize in front of us or to disappear from before us into other dimensions. They also do space travel and time travel. So they do everything. This is their really advanced technology that they have at their fingertips. So the Anunnaki were one of the many technologically advanced alien races. At the time, in fact, their civilization was advanced far beyond most others of their time. The Anunnaki called their home star Zaos. Their sun was called Zaos, Z-A-O-S. The Anunnaki are a belligerent and conquering race. They are fierce, evil, lustful, incestuous, bloodthirsty, deceitful, jealous, and domineering. They are also carnivorous and are often cannibalistic. They also demand human sacrifices of virgins from those they conquer and from their own kind, whom they also enslave. So if you can imagine the worst characteristics you can conceive in Satan, you have well concocted the impression of the Anunnaki. They specialize in mind control. They also perfected economic control with the development of money and the usury system. They have conducted extensive genetic engineering and have genetically engineered, among other things, a super reptilian race which the Anunnaki called the Ducaz, D-U-C-A-Z. The Ducaz are used for conquering and controlling the Nibirian population and those of other conquered races. Thus, the Dukas are reptilians. There are different types of reptilians amongst them. Their masters, the Anunnaki elite, are not the Dukas. Like anything associated with the Anunnaki, there is a rigid, inequitable, and regimented class structure amongst the Dukas. The reptilians, or Dukas, were sent by their masters, quote-unquote, the Nephilim, or the Elohim, to fight in wars and other alien races, and to serve as their spies, bodyguards, and police force. There are many factions amongst the Anunnaki, and one of the most bitter enemies of the Dukas call themselves the Persires, P-E-R-S-S-I-R-E-S, a group of aliens for which I coined the word vulturites many years ago. They're called vulturites not because they look like vultures, as some have claimed. In fact, they don't look like that at all. There are very apt reasons why I have called them vulturites, which I will not go into in this discussion. Ironically, the Persires are just a different faction of the Anunnaki race. However, the Dukas, the reptilians, and the Persirites, vulturites, have always been bitter enemies even to this day. The descendants of these two groups are now on Earth, vying for supremacy of the world, and many of these are currently in political, financial, scientific, religious, legal, medical, especially blood banks, entertainment, military, agrarian, or commercial positions, and also in the sex industry. Now, this is one of the things that Thoth in the Emerald Tablets explained to us, that these reptilian humanoids, they're shapeshifters, and they even do away with the legitimate rulers of countries, that they take their position and they rule in their stead, and they create havoc and they control the population of the country they're overlords of. And they are reptilian, but they look human to us. And they're shapeshifters. That's according to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. You'll find that on the playlist under the Emerald Tablets that I have. Now, most of these, there's a lot of information in there. Let's remember he wrote this about, 6,000 BC, it was really way back. And he also talks about the destruction of Atlantis. Now, most of these aliens here, this article says, are not consciously aware of their alien origins. The Anunnaki are flesh and blood biological beings with abounding pride, arrogance, uncontrollable urges for adult and child sex partners, whether they be willing or forced participants, and they have a great appetite for conquest and control. They sound almost psychopathic narcissists, don't they? There are such people, and they really don't have any soul to begin with. I mean, I have met, unfortunately, a lot of people close to me, even in my family, and they are definitely, there's something definitely missing in their souls. They're so black and dark, and they create havoc. You have to really cut yourself off from people like that. There is no limit to what damage they can do, as long as they're on top of the world. So now, in this thing here, this warlike race has an insatiable thirst for control of other beings and dominance over other races and the less privileged classes of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki developed and imposed complex, oppressive caste and gender systems. They are misogynists as well. That was why they eliminated the worship of the Divine Mother of the early people on Earth whom they conquered when they arrived. There was so much resistance to the elimination of the worship of the Divine Mother that the Anunnaki set up replacement mothers for various cultures such as the Earth Mother, Mother Nature, and thereafter further corrupted the Divine Mother's image by falsely attributing her with lustful, vengeful, and jealous qualities. The interpretation of Kali is one of those false attributes. Now, due to the Great Collision, the Earth and the planets and moons of our solar system were severely affected. Nibiru too suffered great damage as a result of the celestial collision. This caused the Anunnaki to come to Earth in search of a permanent home. They did not come to search for physical gold, as Sitchin hypothesizes. Zechariah Sitchin, The Complete Earth Chronicles, is available to purchase on Amazon if you want to read his books. Now, oddly, gold is not a native mineral to Earth, so the Anunnaki would not be expecting it on Earth, nor did they come to Earth to mine for gold, to make a shield to protect their ailing atmospheric conditions on Nibiru. If they did not succeed in saving their planet because their planet was destroyed, it says here. What appears in space is really the shadow of Nibiru many light years away. However, the Anunnaki were delighted to find gold on Earth because they used it for ornamentation. They also imported many slaves to mine the gold, and they used many of the Anunnaki lower classes to do the same. Alexander, regardless of gold is native to our planet or not, it is my firm belief that the Anunnaki came here primarily to extract this mineral. It is possible that they did not need gold to heal Nibiru's atmosphere, as they claimed, but gold was or is of crucial importance to them. The first major human settlements are all centered around gold mining. I suspect that gold is a key ingredient in the recipe that made the Anunnaki immortal, which would make it the most valuable mineral in the universe. Since their home Nibiru was destroyed, the Anunnaki elite and their cadre of attendants were forced to become transient, with the majority of them living in a huge spacecrafts like a city that orbited the Earth. And by then, the other Anunnaki races were already placed in different worlds that they had conquered, including Earth, Mars, and the rest of our solar system. They were also interspersed throughout the Orion and the Pleiades systems. Thus it can be seen that the Anunnaki are extraordinarily powerful and were feared by many. The Anunnaki elite and those who were permitted to travel moved from the orbiting spacecraft in similar shuttlecrafts to visit Earth below. They also sent freighter-class crafts to Earth for commercial and military purposes. Interplanetary slave trade was prevalent and lucrative, so it's no wonder that the ancient people feared their gods, who they claimed lived in the sky. The majority of the Earthlings now are genetically and symbolically part of the off-planet civilization of the Anunnaki, and you'll see why I say that as the story unfolds. The Anunnaki elite of Nibiru are genetic manipulators who know how to create artificial light forms. In their arrogance, they tried to play God. Their highly advanced technology and their overbearing size and strength made them nearly invincible in the eyes of the early people. Thus, the Anunnaki elite were seen and worshipped as gods by men. The Anunnaki elite have sometimes been referred to as the Nordics or the Blondes. They are tall, robust, full of vigor, athletic, and usually of fair complexion. Their symbol of status and power is the winged disc that represents their home star Zaos. These Anunnaki elite were later known as Elohim and Nephilim. These evil Elohim must not be confused with the divine Elohim of the true creation. The Anunnaki elite, the Nephilim, created many religions so that they could be worshipped as gods. This gives them great satisfaction, of course, and the Anunnaki developed religions by corrupting any spirituality they observed in the indigenous people of the earth. They employed religions as a powerful means of controlling the indigenous people. Different religions were set up with doctrines in direct opposition to one another in order to breed disharmony, distrust, confusion, war, and arrogance. The Anunnaki planted hybrids from other worlds on Earth when they came, and not long after their arrival, they began to spread themselves as far and as wide as they could and took control of sections of the planet by genetic engineering. They forced the indigenous people out of their own establishments and forced them into total submission. This is again what is confirmed in the Emerald Tablets, written by Thoth the Atlantean. They used the indigenous people for controlled experimentation of biological breeding. Today, there are aliens who abduct Earthlings for cloning, and they also mutilate animals. Most of these abductions and assaults are carried out by Anunnaki Remnants, the term I use to indicate those Anunnaki who were stranded on Earth. As mentioned earlier, the Anunnaki elite conquered and enslaved primitive people who were already residing on Earth. Some claim that Jesus was a hybrid from Nibiru, which maliciously implies that he was an Anunnaki. That is patently false. Jesus is in fact the Son of God, who incarnated here to remind and reawaken the sleeping divine beings of their true divine origins. In Genesis 6:2-4, it's recorded by the Anunnaki who wrote most of the Old Testament that the sons of God, the Anunnaki males, saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. Actually, Genesis was written by Moses. Now, in developing this doctrine, and Moses, of course, was not an Anunnaki. In developing this doctrine, the Anunnaki were trying to show that the sons of God were lured to earth and corrupted by the indigenous women of earth. In fact, the women of earth at that time were purer than the males, and they were revered by the males because earthlings spiritually still retained closeness to the Divine Mother. Okay, well, Moses, when he wrote Genesis, of course, wanted to tell us what was taking place. He did write about the Nephilim, yes. Now, the Anunnaki, the article goes on to say, had to twist this to make it appear that women were a gender that could not be trusted and that they must be oppressed by the males. The sons of God, quote-unquote, abused and horribly mistreated the indigenous women of the earth to set the example of a misogynistic model for the indigenous men of the earth to follow. It was very critical to the plans of the Anunnaki to switch the gender of God from mother to father, from feminine to masculine. The Anunnaki chauvinism caused women to be subjugated to men and treated as their footstools in many cultures, including Arab, Asian, Jewish, and Western societies. In Isaiah 66:1 is found the saying, "Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool." In Ephesians 5:22-24, Paul, who was, I don't agree with this. It says say Paul was an incarnate Anunnaki. I don't agree with that at all. He says, "Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands, as unto the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything." Well, yeah, the male is the head of the household. He's the bread earner, and the woman is home, taking care of the home and family. Can you imagine if it was the other way around? Now, going back to this, therefore, according to the teaching of Paul, the wives are footstools to the husbands and are the thrones. In one usurped stroke, Paul, on behalf of the Anunnaki, subordinated all Christian women to an inferior status. Many churches equate the teaching of Paul to the teaching of Christ. Okay, that's not what Paul's aim was at all. Now, as evidence that the Anunnaki authored much of the Old Testament, again, I don't agree with that, and also corrupted it, let's consider how they have manipulated the writings of Moses, who was one of the incarnate beings of light. Okay, look, I'm reading this because I want us to know what people are saying, but I don't agree with this, okay? Now, in Exodus 24:7 is found a passage telling the people that they must be obedient to the blood sacrifice. Further, in Numbers 27:20, Moses was supposed to have said that the people must be obedient to Joshua. Again, in Deuteronomy 4:30, Moses supposedly commanded his people to be obedient to God's voice in the tribulations and the latter days. And yet again, the Anunnaki purposely corrupted the sayings of Moses in Deuteronomy 8:20, where one is told that one must be obedient to God, or, "As the nations which the Lord destroyeth before your face, so shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God." These cannot be the words of the true God of love. These are the words of the demiurges, chief agents, the Anunnaki. The true God does not punish people or nations or anything. The only other time that the word "be obedient" appear in the Old Testament is in 2 Samuel 22:25, where it is found that, quote, "Strangers shall submit themselves unto me. As soon as they hear, they shall be obedient unto me." Clearly, these are the words of the slave masters, the Anunnaki. There are only 3 other occasions where the words "be obedient" appear in the Bible. That's the attribution attributed to Paul. 2 Corinthians 2:9, Paul directs his followers to be obedient in all things. Ephesians 6:5 reads, "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. Is not this awful?" Now, the last time the words "be obedient" appear in the Christian Bible is in Titus 2:9, where Paul says, "Exhort servants to be obedient unto their own masters, and to please them well in all things." Clearly, Paul was a representative for a god of terror and slave master's henchmen, as can be seen in the examples of the quote, "be obedient," it can be seen that Jesus tried to undo the teachings of the Anunnaki in the Old Testament, but Paul corrupted Jesus' teachings, and in so doing, returned the God of fear to the terror to power. The creation myths throughout the world are similar in their major thrusts. Now, why is this so? It's because the various creation myths were spread by the Anunnaki as they migrated around the world. The religions set up by the Anunnaki to control and manipulate populations incorporated the various creation myths. These religions are not based upon love, they're based upon fear. Wherever the Anunnaki went and conquered, they consolidated the people into densely populated communities so they could better force the people to work for them and to control them physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and economically as slaves. They control by instilling fear and keeping the people ignorant, and these patterns still exist today. However, they are more subtle and often appear more attractive today than they did in the past. Thus, in this sense, humans were slaves to the Anunnaki before, and they remain so today. The Anunnaki introduced the adornment of the body with jewelry. They also promoted very expensive tastes that would force people into economic slavery. They introduced polygamy, incest, and pedophilia, which are hallmarks of Anunnaki. Such traits are noted in various cultures, including the ancient Egyptian royalty and the patriarchs of the Old Testament. And in many senses, we in this technologically advanced age are slaves to the modern commodities, government, economic systems, cultures, religions, customs, mores, and etc. But most importantly, we are slaves to this virtual reality, blinded by its subtleties and falsehoods and the simulation of divine realms. The Anunnaki first visited the earth about 500,000 years ago. By then, they had already conquered the Pleiades and Mars and many other worlds. After some trials, the first wave of successful genetic engineering occurred on Earth about 300,000 years ago. And through genetic engineering, women were made physically inferior to men in stature, strength, and speed, even in occupations where strength and speed are irrelevant, such as in the clergy, law, medicine, politics, commerce, and science. Women are greatly disadvantaged and obstructed from participating even up to this day. And this shows the extent of the chauvinist influence of the Anunnaki. Apart from genetic engineering on humans, there was also similar work carried out on various species, including the birds, reptiles, fish, beasts, and plants. The Anunnaki also practiced bestiality. They created monstrosities, some of which are legendary. Some were half animal, half human. Others were half bird, half fish, half human. The Genesis story was created and recorded by the civilization that was restarted by the Anunnaki. The Sumerians were amongst the earliest ones to process recordings on tablets describing the history of the Anunnaki on Earth, which is in accordance to what the Anunnaki dictated. The advanced civilization of Sumeria did not evolve over many, many thousands of years. Instead, it was dressed up almost instantly by the introduction of many facets of civilization by the Anunnaki, including the legal system, the social order, economic models, religions, science, mathematics, weights and measures, writing, literature, music, the performing arts, cosmology, painting, sculpture, astronomy, astrology, medicine, animal husbandry, domestication of plants, homeotherapy, culinary skills, art, entertainment, etc. Sumeria became a civilization that other backward societies envied and feared. And about 35,000 years ago, the Cro-Magnon man took over Earth from the Neanderthal man. The Anunnaki elite murdered the entire Neanderthal population after they had finished using the Neanderthals as specimens for genetic experiments. Homo sapiens were the result of the second wave of genetic engineering. The second wave allowed the Homo sapiens to procreate with the civilian Anunnaki. As time went by, things got out of control, with monstrosities abounding and many half-human, half-beasts were running amok. In the heyday of Atlantis, there was space travel for the privileged classes, teleportation as well. This is again by Thoth the Atlantean, written in the Emerald Tablets. You'll find in my playlist on that. Teleportation was also common in those days for the privileged classes, As the Atlantean slaves became more and more advanced, they began to disobey their gods, the Anunnaki elite. This concerned their masters, thus the decision was made by them to destroy Atlantis. Some of the Anunnaki elite and their chosen attendant fled to Earth in huge spacecrafts and went to other planets such as Mars, and they even went to other continents, according to Thoth in the Emerald Tablets. They fled to other continents, South America, India, North America. And they went to other planets such as Mars and even to other systems. Most of the Anunnaki were left behind, and upon fleeing the Earth, the Anunnaki elite blew up Atlantis and destroyed it, hoping to kill all of the remaining Anunnaki and the rest of the inhabitants. But some of the Anunnaki slaves discovered the plans of the Anunnaki elite to destroy Atlantis. Some of these slaves were able to escape before the destruction, taking with them some of the knowledge, artifacts, technology, writing, weapons, and culture of Atlantis to various parts of the Earth. This is again what is written in the Emerald Tablets by Thoth the Atlantean. Another reason the Anunnaki elite decided to blow up Atlantis was because they were under extreme pressure from the investigation of the Yatas, the amoebic rescuers of the light, who are like space patrol. The Anunnaki remnants who escaped Atlantis began constructing cultures which we now know as the Aztecs, the Inca, the Maya, and most importantly the ancient Egyptian. There are many Anunnaki on planet Earth today. Some are the descendants of the survivors from Atlantis who escaped before it was blown up. After the destruction of Atlantis, the third wave of genetic engineering performed by the higher class Anunnaki remnants took place about 20,000 years ago. One group of Anunnaki remnants built the pyramids by employing massive amounts of forced human labor and advanced technology, and these sites were used as launching pads for spacecrafts for the privileged classes of the Anunnaki remnants. The early Egyptians who built the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were also Anunnaki remnants from Atlantis, whom the Anunnaki elite had intended to annihilate when they destroyed Atlantis. When they returned to Earth after destroying Atlantis, they saw Anunnaki remnants cultures. The rulers and kings of various cultures were usually appointed by the Anunnaki elite, and when the Anunnaki elite fled and then the Anunnaki remnant took over, the remnants adopted this pattern of appointing kingships. This is why many cultures, including the Chinese, Japanese, Egyptian, and Western European, followed the order of the divine right of kings. Thousands of years ago, when the Anunnaki elite returned to Earth, planning to restart their dominion on Earth, they were surprised to find the Anunnaki remnant cultures blossoming. This concerned them greatly, as they thought they were losing control of the Earth to their former slaves. In desperation, the Anunnaki elite set up retaking control of the Earth, and they did this by causing a deluge which catastrophically destroyed almost all evidence of the former cultures. Only the huge monuments such as the Sphinx and the pyramids and the ziggurats, etc., survived the flood. Nearly all the huge monuments around the world were created at the behest of the Anunnaki elite, or later, the Anunnaki remnants. Fearful that there would be Anunnaki remnants left after the deluge, who could rapidly reconstruct the culture, especially in Egypt, the Anunnaki elite took the tremendous risk of selecting an area of the Earth onto which they could instantaneously deposit a culture that would be far superior to that of any tribe on Earth. And this emergency plan was executed in Sumeria. Sumeria developed almost instantaneously because of an extremely urgent situation. The Anunnaki elite were losing influence over the Earth to the Anunnaki remnants of Atlantis, who had escaped, among other places, to Egypt and even to the Americas. These Anunnaki remnants were developing the Egyptian, Aztec, Mayan, and Inca cultures and could attain dominance if left to their own devices. Therefore, the Anunnaki elite took the extreme risky decision to create a superculture complete with written language and records in Sumeria, and at this point the most powerful of the Attis of the Light interceded and captured a great number of the Anunnaki elite. Many of the Anunnaki elite fled the Earth yet again in their spacecrafts to return to Orion and the Pleiades systems. These once proud and mighty Anunnaki elite are now nothing but fugitives cowering in hiding. The Genesis story was used to control the people and to force them to worship the Anunnaki elite as gods from the sky, and the story of Genesis is not the story of the true divine creation. The story of Genesis is in fact very recent when compared to the scheme of things, so how can it be a creation story? There were already various groups of races of aliens and earthlings on Earth when the Anunnaki elite first took control of a portion of the Earth. There were battles among the various groups for supremacy, but the Anunnaki elite were too powerful for them. The Sumerian tablets record events of so-called origins of man and creation that were really events of the beginning of the Anunnaki elite's latest colonization of the Earth. The conquerors themselves wrote the tablets. Thus, what was recorded on the tablets by the Sumerians dictated by their so-called gods was self-serving. Through past experience, the Anunnaki had seen how religions could control the populations of various worlds. This is an important tool that they use for control. The Old Testament is dedicated to Yahweh, and this very male-oriented because the Anunnaki were extremely upset by Mother Goddess worship and wanted to eliminate any mention of her. Again, I don't agree with what is being written here, most of this anyway. God is Yahweh, the Son of, and the Son of God is our Lord Jesus Christ, the Holy Trinity. Now, the Old Testament, it says here, acknowledges the presence of many Anunnaki gods on earth in early times. Well, we know that, yes. The Nephilim, the Genesis stories about the spread of humankind through generations following Adam and Eve, and the story of the divine's disenchantment with humankind that precedes the deluge. In the Sumerian texts, there was mention of the people of the Shem, meaning spaceship. The Anunnaki were the people of the Shem, and they came down to earth and copulated with primitive earthlings. This is recorded in the Genesis story. The Anunnaki elite also started a new, highly advanced culture in Babylon, and as always, they destroyed cultures and did away with populations whenever they got out of hand, and they weren't, groveling at their feet, and that's when they restarted elsewhere. Today, the Anunnaki Remnants are planning to reestablish the majesty of bygone days when the Anunnaki elite had a complete tyranny over the earth. They plan to restart the world again. The Anunnaki Remnants, with the help of humans as well as the incarnated Anunnaki in human bodies, have built massive underground bunkers and railway lines that are a part of their structure for allowing them and their cadre of attendants to survive the catastrophes that they believe the fugitive Anunnaki elite are planning for the Earth. They cannot leave the planet in spacecraft because they were left with limited resources after the Anunnaki elite escaped with all of the technology advanced spacecrafts. The Anunnaki Remnants think that they can select their own chosen ones and take refuge with them in underground bunkers during the period of catastrophes. They plan to take a whole garrison of slaves underground. These will include soldiers, police, firefighters, cooks, entertainers, beauticians, doctors, scientists, etc. And in the aftermath, they will use them on the surface as before. Most importantly, they will use their own new breed of clones to populate the Earth, and the Earth population is being programmed to accept this underground scenario, as can be seen in movies like Deep Impact. These Anunnaki think that their masters, the Anunnaki elite, will be returning as before, and they think also that they will have pleased them with the way that they have influenced the Earth. But the Anunnaki Remnants' plan has been thwarted. Their evil desire to destroy much of the life and culture on the surface of the Earth will fail, and in the aftermath they expect to find the Earth inhabited with only a relatively few survivors with whom they would easily subdue with the weapons, technology, military force that they secured underground during catastrophes, and they hope their masters will restart all cultures with themselves deified and served by people they plan to enslave. The ones chosen to continue in their new civilization are humans and clones who have specially chosen characteristics for blind obedience, and they think their masters will once again be the literal gods of the world. And the Anunnaki Remnants are now amongst us, and they are our current puppet masters, manipulating, controlling the world. This is by Cyberspace Orbit. It's on Humans Are Free, Creative Commons. Now again, I'm just stating this is what's going around. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.